Activate speed buff. Engage the toxin condition overload aura. Now, where's that target? Target acquired. Let's see that big damage, baby. This is bad. This is bad. Elemental War. Shocking speed. Apparently negative range for some reason. Natural wait, why natural talent? Condition overload will never be the same again. Yeah, it'll be better because you'll use a build that isn't this one to do something powerful with. Condition overloaded. Volt here is trying to use shocking speed to force an electricity status effect on enemies in melee range, and then supplement that with toxin elemental ward, which can be made to have an 100% status chance. Now, shocking speed is not affected by range, and the duration of speed is pretty bad, so I use narrow-minded, and that's going to make the range of elemental ward really bad, but at least it'll be kind of the same as shocking speed. That's cute. Natural talent was a misguided attempt to make elemental ward easier to use. But anyway, you get 2 guaranteed status effects for condition overload, tons of damage. Well, except that you could get almost that much damage from an arcane. Swift momentum. This can save you space on your melee weapon, unless you just use Narimon focus. The aura slot's not worth that much either. And Volt, you know, Volt is fast. Volt can get to the enemy that you're gonna do the big condition overload damage to faster, right? And then you can run into them really quickly. What? You said 2 status effects is not very much. You're trying to tell me that the 2 status effects, the electricity and the toxin, that I'm guaranteed when I run up to an enemy to melee them, those 2 on top of the ones I get from my melee weapon, you're trying to tell me that's not a lot of damage? Who are you kidding? That's so much damage. That's like 240% more damage than just some other weapon. That's a lot, you know? What you're trying to say, you could just use Saren, Toxic Lash, and infuse Zaku's Zada's Whisper, and you would get guaranteed toxin, void, and you wouldn't have to be in melee range. But guns don't have the condition overload, so you might as well be in melee range. Oh, but you could just Zada's Whisper as a separate damage multiplier, and so you also just get more damage. Oh. I thought it would be really fun to have all these different effects around you, and it's only 2 different effects, but you know, you get to run into enemies, and then when you touch them, they just die. Like at low levels, you could just run through enemies, and they just die spontaneously. Now, a ton of other builds can do that way better, but this one can be used for high level enemies, sort of. You usually die after running up to them because this build is really squishy. Volt really isn't equipped to do this, but it's not the worst thing ever, right? I mean, it's fun. It can be satisfying to see all the different effects pop up on the screen, you know? It's still, you walk up to the enemy and they get a bunch of different effects, and you could see some big numbers with condition overload over time. You just have to attack for a while. It's not that bad. You know, if you're just doing it for fun, it's not that, come on. We can just have a bit of fun. Speaking of doing this just for fun, yes, I'll admit, I only made this fashion this way because I was trying to trick people into thinking that this video was going to be about Speed Volt. I gotcha, I'm not sorry, but what I am sorry about is this brown energy color. Why? I apologize to everyone whose eyes were blighted by this ugly brown and tealish blue energy. Why did I do this? Past Zandy, please tell me. Send a missive into the future. Why did I make it this color? And of course, the obvious problem here is that it could just be this color. Why not just have it be this color? Now, I don't like this color. I don't like these energy colors, and I don't know why I chose them. Maybe I felt like I needed to contrast with the other Volt appearances in Volt Week. I don't feel like this does that. Because doesn't the Necromech Capacitance Volt has purple and blue, so what does this is not different enough. Also, it looks so bad with the colors on the skin. And speaking of the colors on the skin, okay, watch this, okay? Instantly 50% improved. This fashion is so much better without a helmet that has, look at all the orange on this head. Look at how much orange is on this fashion head. It's absolutely obscene. I feel like I've committed a fashion crime, and the fashion police will now abduct my Volt, which is luckily masquerading as a speed Volt, so I'll probably get away. The final thing I want to say is about these kneecaps. Why is it double kneecaps? Why double kneecaps? The Umbra leg armor here is the most redundant accessory on any fashion I have ever seen or apparently made, I hope. Why? It's just the kneecap twice. What on earth? Like, even the mustache really asks less questions of the person looking at this fashion than this double kneecap. Why have I done this? The great thing about this fashion, and when I say the great thing, I mean the only good thing about this fashion, is that you're just going to be looking at this huge cape. Like, I think it looks good from the back because I covered up the entire fashion with a Syandana. Oh, I guess it is really bad, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, you could just cast shock. The shocking speed augment is so bad. It's not affected by range, and all it really does is make it so you get an electric status effect on a Warframe whose theme is literally electricity status effect. So I guess it is really bad. But the whole idea of condition overload priming is something that's mesmerized people, myself included, for quite a long time. Yes, you could do, a better version of this, where you have buffing abilities like Zada's Whisper from Zaku, Saren's Toxic Lash, you could do it on Saren. Saren has that elemental buffing augment for corrosive as well, so you could add that. You could run like Viral Heat on a weapon with Slash or Impact or Puncture, some different IPS status effects. So that's 4 different elements, then you add corrosive, that's 5, and you're adding elemental damage. And then Zada's Whisper is extra, so it won't interfere with you doing your other status effects. So that's also another damage multiplier, and then that's 6 elements, 6 status effects. And then Toxic Lashes is also forced, so it doesn't interfere with your other effects. So you have 7, and 2 of them are sort of automatic. You don't have to worry about them interfering with the other ones you're trying to get. So as long as you attack really fast, you should be able to get a lot of different effects. So you could do a version of this that's just, like, not as bad. I still don't think that's that great. It's ultimately just damage, and I feel like at that point it's sort of overkill. You could have gone further to add more damage in this Volt build that I showed. It's just not that amazing. Like, you don't really need that much more damage that much at the time. In fact, aside for a capture target like this, you could just use a heavy attack. But I think that the real trouble here is when it's not automatic. A lot of the time people recommend builds to me that have sort of a gameplay flow where you're supposed to throw or fire a secondary weapon or a primary weapon and then swap to your melee weapon and attack. And the idea is that the primary secondary weapon primed the enemy with condition overload statuses. But that's really inefficient because you could just keep attacking with the melee weapon and you would get blood rush damage. You'd be getting combo that would be making you crit more, which is also more damage. And can kill the enemy in a timely manner. Anytime you consider doing that, always try just not priming the enemy and instead just attack with a melee weapon. If the melee weapon's build is pretty good, you're gonna kill the enemy faster by just attacking with the melee weapon. But if the enemies are very tanky, and if you can fill a few other conditions, I think this can be sorta okay. I think the conditions you have to fill are basically many enemies at once and many different status effects. If you can get a lot of value out of like that one shot, maybe from an explosive weapon, and then hit a lot of different enemies with many, many different status effects, more status effects is just damage from condition overload. You get 2 more. It sounds really good. You force 2 status effects, but it's only like 240% melee damage as base damage. And you already have a lot of base damage, so getting that much more might sound like a lot, but the marginal benefit when you already have so much, which you usually do, is just not that high. At the same time, like, damage is still damage. If marginal benefits aside, if you get 6 more status effects, if you can spend like 1 second and you get 6 more status effects, really? Or like 4 or 5, let's be reasonable. Okay, that's actually a lot of damage. Like, to be fair, against a tankier enemy, that is a fair amount of damage. So if you can do that, I think this can be an okay approach in some situations. I feel like this one is really bad, and I just wanted to put a bunch of auras around Volt. I like these effects where you just buff up. Maybe it's my World of Warcraft ancestry from the times of yore, like 17 years ago or however long it's been, but I really like just kind of buffing up sometimes. It can be satisfying. I like seeing a bunch of effects go off as much as maybe not as much as the next guy, but I like that. I just think that it is better when you are either doing it to many enemies at once with a lot of different effects, or it's automatic. In other words, you're using a buffing ability, Zada's Whisper, Toxic Lash, and that Saren corrosive buffing ability. Those are all already damage multipliers. Zada's Whisper is a separate multiplier. The corrosive buff is, well, elemental damage, and then Toxic Lash is separate, and it's giving you a status effect. So those would already all be good damage multipliers, even if they didn't do Condition Overload shenanigans. And then on top of that, they do, which is what makes it actually pretty good. Like, that is actually pretty good. And so if you really wanted to do that so badly, there are ways you can make it very powerful. This is just not one of them. Here at the end, you may be wondering, how did someone who put so much thought into those other cool build videos that aren't this one also come up with such a terrible build? Well, I'm happy you conveniently asked that question at just the right time. You too can help me brainstorm build ideas during my live streams at twitch.tv/zandypants, linked in the description, where I talk just like this for hours on end about buildcraft. I run a tight ship over there. I'm someone who finds a lot of live streams boring, so I've spent years honing my ability to waffle on for your entertainment. And almost everything I say is prompted by questions from chat. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll get your questions answered in a timely manner on the internet, live. And you'll probably inspire a great or terrible build, like this one, but hopefully not like this one because it's really bad. I hope you've had a bit of fun laughing at this build with me, and I hope its great failures help you make something better. I'll see you on the other side.